Good evening, and welcome to AMTV. And now, after long last, it's back. The original Ident review. Hello, and welcome back to the Ident review. The show where we have a good look and chat about the various television idents that we have come to know and love over the years. And for this instalment, we're going overseas to Sweden to take a look at a batch of idents from Kanal 5. Well, after a long rest, we are back. And I thought to delve back into things, we could go overseas to take a look at some non-UK idents. It's often requested by you viewers, and for today's batch, I have to thank viewer VSwede for linking me to these idents, because trust me, these are truly a feast for the eyes. The channel in question is Kanal 5. After originally launching under a different name in 1989, the name Kanal 5 was introduced in 1996, and from there the strategy was to really develop branding and programming to attract the young adult demographic, which it seemed to have achieved by the mid-2000s, due to getting the rights to broadcast American imports such as Friends, and by airing the Swedish version of popular reality show Big Brother. But also, in the mid-2000s, around 2005, the channel introduced several new idents, and we shall now look at the first of them, titled Pinball. Wow, what a way to start. This ident really captures all the wonderful intricacies that can be found in a well-made pinball machine. All the bright spiraling colours that all blend wonderfully together, the various twists and turns, the different mechanics and elements within the machine, and that finishing image, wow. Seeing the 5 logo amidst all this candy-coloured chaos is truly quite stunning. This is a landscape you could definitely hoist onto your wall. I've always loved pinball, so I could be a little biased, but I think it's hard to deny how wonderful this sequence really is. Beautiful to look at, extremely well made and balanced, somehow managing to cram so much in without it feeling too cluttered for the viewer. And to be fair, if they were targeting an audience between 15 and 24 years old, I think something like this would be just the thing to hook their attention. Fast-paced, bright and colourful, and seeing the 5 be pieced together just works wonders. But enough gushing on this one, let's see if the next ident can achieve the same success. So here is Diamonds. The Swedes certainly have a creative class with these things. I like this one because it is so wildly opposite to the pinball sequence we just saw. Gone are the bright colours, replaced with the gleaming elegance of several diamonds, glimmering and shining against the deep blue, blacks and greys of the background, ultimately shining and showcasing the Kanal 5 logo. To take a guess, I'd say this ident would have been shown before more straightforward TV dramas or movies, programmes that have a grandiose about them, a sense of style and class. Sure, you could argue it isn't necessarily the most complex or even the most original of idents. I mean, BBC Prime did a similar thing 10 years prior, that springs to mind. But nevertheless, you can't deny the way the colours, visuals and music all blend together, work well to create an atmosphere of intrigue and most importantly, excitement. So that's 2 successes in different areas, let's see if we can go for a third winner in this next ident, Sugar Weekend. Okay, can we in the UK take notes from the Swedes, please? This one is hilariously charming. The bright, beautifully contrasting colours have returned, and now we have gummy bears springing to life and dancing about on our screens. Now, normally this sort of imagery would be seen to fit perfectly on, say, a children's TV channel specifically, but here, given that the music is thumping 2000s techno instead of something completely childish, and the darker aspects of the setting we're in, it's a sort of factory dance floor type place, it just gives the whole thing that bit more validity. My only real criticism is that the 2 different elements we see at the beginning, that being these pink bottles and the dice getting their faces pressed, don't really get much more focus after the first few seconds. Don't get me wrong, I love all the attention that the gummies get, but I feel with an ident like this, just having one central focus would have been the best option. And if you were going to split it amongst these three things, then they should all have equal time. But despite that criticism, this ident still does work to a degree, although I think I still prefer Pinball. Let's move on now to sequence number 4 of the day, which is titled Shredder. Sorry TMNT fans, no references here. Similar to Diamonds, this ident is quite a simple concept. An employee puts a piece of paper through a shredder, the strands eventually forming the Kanal 5 logo. What I appreciate about this ident, and all of the ones so far come to think of it, is how much the Kanal 5 designers were willing to experiment with CGI for their sequences. TV channels all over the world were using CGI by 2005, but I haven't seen more bolder attempts to achieve something really creative than what I've seen here so far. To go to the efforts of creating the inner workings of a paper shredder is certainly unique, and despite being 15 years old now, the CGI doesn't look horrible by any means. So whilst not the most interesting ident overall, I can certainly appreciate and respect the boundaries of a small CGI budget that they were constantly pushing. Let's see what awaits us next in Film Lab. Oh boy, that one got me nostalgic. This ident is beautifully crafted and in many ways reminds me of old movie studio intros on VHS tapes. The rousing music rising up to create that sense of wonder you get with movies, particularly the older ones, seeing camera lenses zooming, film stock flying about and locking into place, and the Kanal 5 logo making up a classic film projector, the music score building to crescendo at the same time, you just can't beat it. Again, the fact it reminds me of an old VHS opener could be seen as a downside considering this was made in 2005, not 1985, but again, the use of CGI throughout this sequence has been so well crafted and well placed. This is definitely my favourite sequence of the set so far, mainly for its concept and its design, but also for the huge amount of warmth and nostalgia that it's able to bring out of me, and hopefully out of some of you guys too. But now we shall move on to an ident that certainly isn't my area, makeup. Despite not being an expert, I love how this one is presented. The whole idea of various bits and pieces of makeup kit being used in some sort of militaristic manner is brilliant. Lipstick being fired off as missiles, nail varnish as approaching helicopters, makeup mirrors as the army below. I mean, it takes pure talent and creativity for a designer to have seen these everyday objects and to use their natural shapes to push forward a notion that they are something else. And if done well, like they are done here, then they truly do pack a punch. The final image is just as much about these everyday makeup related objects as it is about the Kanal 5 logo, showing that this is an unconventional army, but one which is relatable to the demographic they are targeting, and one that manipulates these familiar items into something that's very charming and very fun too. It's one of those sequences that just refuses to become boring. This was the biggest surprise of the set for me, but now let's see if I can be similarly impressed, or surprised, with our next sequence, Vanity Air. They never seem to run out of that creative spark, do they? This one takes another familiar setting, this time going through the checks at an airport, and shows us how a suitcase travels through the system, round the conveyor belts, and zooming out to show us this full airport at work. The way the Kanal 5 logo is integrated into all of this, like Pinball, is wonderfully done. It seems like the main logo is treated with just as much importance as to what's going on or around it, which I can't say the same for some UK channels, who almost treat their logos as an afterthought, but here it just works a treat. If anything, I wish the sequence could have been longer so that we got to see more elements and areas of this airport, but for what it is, it grabs your attention by presenting something familiar and having fun with it. I'm surprised we haven't come across an ident yet that I have considered a dud, but let's see if this good streak continues with our next sequence, Phantom. Well, that is not what I expected given the title. We see a bunch of cyclists pacing at blistering speeds down a sort of tube tunnel, the Kanal 5 logo gracefully slotting into place by the sequence's end. And whilst this one visually is just as nice as the others and is fast paced, I would argue for me that this is the first real dud of the set for Kanal 5. For me, this just doesn't really go anywhere, and if anything, it makes me think more of Tron than it does of any Phantom. I'm sure there's a reason as to why it's titled as that, and I'm missing the point entirely, but despite its high energy, this one doesn't keep my attention for long. I'm sure there'll be some of you who think it's great and the high energy is what makes it work, but if it isn't being aimed towards anything, if it's just cyclists starting about with no real pay other than the channel logo, then that doesn't really do it for me, I'm afraid. Still, for this to be the first dud is impressive, but let's hope we have no more of them as we press on. Speaking of pressing on, let's look at our next ident today, which is theatre. Crikey, I want to go to a theatre like that. Lots going on here, several dancers, bits of set and props flying around, all brightly coloured and contrasting. And the main little detail I like is when we see the Kanal 5 logo. The top part of it is stylised as a classic applause card, just made me chuckle when I saw it. But whilst I wouldn't say this one is necessarily a dud, I would say this is a case of far too much being crammed in and not necessarily being spaced out or placed well. Granted, for anyone who has been to or worked in a theatre, they will know just how manic things can be, and the energy this sequence, it does indeed capture. However, all of the things happening came about so quickly and it just sort of overlaps one another. It can feel like an assault on the senses, with the viewer trying to focus on everything around them, with the result being they haven't really had the chance to absorb anything. Nice try with the idea, but I feel they slightly missed the mark on this one. Let's see if things pick up with this next ident, which is titled Piccadilly. I wonder what Piccadilly they were referring to. This one is bizarre, and whilst I love all the little bits of iconography that double for buildings, such as an old mobile phone and an old CRT TV, I struggle to see what the through line of this one is. I know the two halves merged together to form the Kanal 5 logo, but beyond that, what really is there to this one? I don't really have much more to say on this, to be honest. It's not bad by any means, but I just feel if there was a story or a through line here, then I've clearly missed it. Or maybe there wasn't one, and this one was simply made to just be a bit wacky and out there. With what we've seen so far, I certainly wouldn't put it past them. Let's see if there's a bit more to talk about with our next ident today, Vertigo. Little classic nod. I like that. This ident works really well for two main reasons. One being that it captures that horrible feeling of vertigo, the feeling of being so high up, the fear of falling. It's something many suffer with, and its portrayal can be something truly horrific. However, it also works because it's acting as a subtle nod to the classic Alfred Hitchcock film of the same name, with the film's climax involving the leads dashing up a spiral set of steps. Whilst I do wish the overall sequence could be longer and have more of a build, deep down I know it doesn't really need it. It's simple, straight to the point, and by the time you see the Kanal 5 symbol drift into the stairs itself, I think most would have guessed what the theme of this ident was. My guess also is that this one, like Diamonds, would have been used to introduce classic films or TV programs, but again, just a hunch. But from the dizzy heights of Vertigo, let's bring it right back down now, as we head to the streets in Suburbia. Nice idea, but I feel that they could have gone so much further with it. Granted, on some level, you could argue that this is what Suburbia often looks like. Similar looking houses with ordinary looking folk doing ordinary things, that's fine enough. And this one is charming, although, is it just me, or does it seem that the whole picture has like a haze over it? I don't know, it just seems a bit fuzzed over to me. Anyhow, when I said I thought they could have gone further, I mean by showing us the other side of what Suburbia can be. The darker, more grungier, and often more real side. I think that's infinitely more interesting, and to a lot of younger viewers certainly more relatable. The sunnier side of Suburbia is something people often experience later on in life when they're older, and considering Kanal 5 wants that younger demographic, I think that had they shown the complete flip side to what we have here, that could have packed a hell of a lot more punch. Nevertheless, let's not dwell on what isn't here, and so we will trudge on to our penultimate ident of the day, which is Supermarket. Well, that would certainly be considered as a supermarket. I think the real power of this one lays within its final image, when we can see all the different compartments and areas that make up this grand place. Don't get me wrong, seeing the individual bits and pieces along the way is a nice touch for sure, but I think there may have been some other, more effective way to show us the awe of a supermarket than just panning quickly from room to room. It is wonderfully creative, I just wish it had been given a bit more airtime to be able to show it. That seems to be one of the running criticisms for some of these idents, that had they been given, say, 30 seconds instead of 15, that they would have worked a lot more strongly and created more of an impact with the viewer. But now we shall move on to our final ident of the day, which is titled as Sky Pirates. This one is just too cool. You've got ships flying in the air, pirates swinging swords at each other, cannons firing coloured laser beams, old CRTs swinging about for some reason. Admittedly, it does all happen a bit too fast, you'd probably have to watch it a few times to really appreciate what's on screen, but honestly, I really like this concept. The idea of pirates is fascinating to many, myself included, so elevate it and make something truly bonkers, it's definitely going to draw eyes to the TV, and I would think certainly get the younger viewers interested in what is going on. I also want to say that I really enjoy the music to this one. It's intense, it's not necessarily happy clappy, it's exciting, and it makes you want to watch what's going on. Again, it really could be a bit longer as a sequence so that we can really appreciate the creative effort that was being put to work here, but for what we have, I would say this is one of the more unique idents of the entire set. Overall then, how do these idents for Kanal 5 stack up? Well, I think without a doubt I can say confidently that if there is one thing that all of these sequences have, it is a huge dollop of creativity. All of them have clearly had a lot of time and effort put into them, treated not as a last-minute afterthought for the channel, but a key part of its branding and appeal to the target demographic that they were going for. By creating sequences that are fast-paced, have beautiful colours dashing around, taking familiar concepts and making them a lot more fun or interesting, these are the hallmarks of some fantastic ident designs. Sure, not every one of them today was a flat-out winner, but the vast majority captured some sort of appeal that I can't say has been the same with all the UK channels we have looked at previously. Kanal 5 did a great job introducing these back in the mid-2000s, and it represents the creativity of Swedish talent very well. I plan on visiting more countries here on the ident review, so if you have any sets in mind, please do leave a link in the comments section to where I can find these sequences. Again, a massive thank you to VSwede who helped me find these wonderful idents today, and thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time here on the ident review. A massive thank you to our producer and director patrons for your support towards us here at AMTV. You just help keep us going, and that's massively appreciated. And that does bring us to the end of another evening here on AMTV. We hope you enjoyed the programme, and we hope to see you next time. Good night.